dealt a lot with cancer. And I'm talking about dealing with cancer in the 60s and 70s. So in those days, he was directly in touch with the Tata Memorial Hospital of Bombay. So that is one thing I always regret in my life that I did not do. But I'm very impressed that, your knowledge and your curiosity and your information that you collect, now you can share it with all of us.
Yeah.
So that is a very wonderful thing. Of course, you were doing it like with the use of the digital world, but now to hear you and then be able to understand what you are really trying to tell us from your heart, that has a very big impact. And that is what impresses me about this app very much. Thank you, Anand. An honor to be with you after such a long time.
Yeah. It is my beer about my game on the
Yes. You see, Dr. H.M. Munje has been a very, very legendary figure to the Baha'is of India. We know he was amongst the very first members of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of India. And I have had an occasion of knowing him right from my childhood, because that Dr. H.M. Munje was associated with my family and especially with the Baha'is of Nasik right from 1962 onwards. So there is a lot of memory right from my very childhood as a 3-4-year-old, all the way till I became an homeopath.
We about the Munje.
To tell you about H.M. Munje would first be to tell you about Dr. H.M. Munje as a Baha'i. And he was a source of knowledge, not only knowledge, but also wisdom. So where to use his knowledge of the Baha'i faith and in what way to use it was the greatest experience that one can have from Dr. Munje. I remember as a very young boy, I was discussing with some members of the National Spiritual Assembly. They were talking about Dr. H.M. Munje. And they said Dr. H.M. Munje would sit there in the NSA, silently listening to an issue, and he would not talk in between. And after all the discussions were done, the members of the NSA would always go back to Dr. Munje, and they would ask him, yes, Dr. Munje, what do you say about this issue? And that Baha'i friend said that Dr. Munje would never say anything that I say this. He would quote from the writings. He would always go to the Baha'i writings, and from the writings, he would say, this is what the writings say about this issue. And now he leaves it. Then he would leave that issue. He would not try to, push his point over there. This is in the writings about this issue. Now you have to understand. So that is something that touched me all my life. And it has affected me as a Baha'i very much. So it is very clear that the writings point out to you the guideline, the direction. And it is up to you to go to the writings find your way and solve the problem. So that is one thing about Dr. Munje I remember. The other thing was about his teaching methods. So I know of one Baha'i friend who is, of course, no more a very, very dedicated Baha'i, and that was Mr. Lande. And Mr. Lande was in the army and he was in Devdali. And then later on, I came across Mr. Lande when I was studying in Dharwad. So Mr. Lande would tell me that he became a Baha'i at the hands of Dr. Munje. And he says that I was stuck with the understanding of Durga Devi. So one night he sat with us, with three of them, and he explained the whole concept of goddess Durga Devi in such a way that in the morning when we were leaving his house, we had signed the Baha'i card. So that is a wonderful way that Dr. Munje was able to go to the depth of the question of the person and resolve his points. And one more thing that I would like to add over here is his simplicity. He was such a legend, such a learned person. You know, I mean, I remember him, even now he's right in front of my eyes. And my mother would talk to us about Dr. Munje when he would come to Nasik from Kanpur to teach the Baha'i faith for 2 or 3 days. He would stay with us with our family. I'm talking about the 60s. I'm talking about between the 60s and the 70s. And that time we were not well-to-do at all. And we had a lot of difficulties making the two ends meet. And my mother would say that Dr. Munje was a person when he came, he never had any demands. And he was fine. I don't know how to say it, but she says 1 fried egg and 1 loaf of bread was what he needed. That's all. But when he went out to teaching for 2 days and 3 days, he would be teaching the people in Nasik. And today we see the effect of the presence of people like Dr. Munje and Dr. Mahajer, hands of the cause, Dr. Mahajer, hands of the cause, Mr. Samandari, and they have visited Nasik. And we have had that opportunity, and we see the growth in Nasik today by their blessings.
What was the most creative part of him?
The most fascinating thing about Dr. H.M. Munje was his simplicity and was his way of explanation. He never would cut you when you were speaking. He would hear you out completely. And after you had finished speaking, only then would he try to answer your question. And the answers were always to the point. So that is the wonderful thing about Dr. Munje, that he always first tried to understand the opposite person. And his personality was so radiating. You know, when he would enter a place, you could feel his presence. You could feel the vibes of his spiritual power. Yeah, one of the most interesting book of Dr. We know very well that Dr. Munje has written very wonderful books about the introduction of the Baha'i faith. And one of his books that as a young man, always referred to was Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And that is the understanding of the Hindu religion in the light of the Baha'i faith. And we know that Dr. H.M. Munje has introduced the Baha'i faith to the Vedic religion in a very scientific way, in a manner that a real Hindu who has understood the Vedic religion would really be able to appreciate his work. And where books are concerned, we know that Dr. H.M. Munje was an encyclopedia by himself. And because he was so well read, and I just told you that whenever you referred to an issue or you went to him with a question, he would take you directly to the writings. And his answer would not be something that is coming from a human being. It is something that is coming from the holy writings. So you were so touched and you were so confident of what advice he has been giving us.
As a homeopathic doctor, how did he inspire me?
Yes. I had a number of instances where I had an opportunity to discuss with Dr. Munje about homeopathy. And especially after after I started studying homeopathy. And I remember he guiding us through one of the quotations of The Guardian, where it said that homeopathy was very much according to the principles of the Baha'i faith of healing, and that is especially the simple medicine and the use of one medicine at a time, and the use of natural laws in healing. The other thing, what I know about Dr. Munje was he dealt a lot with cancer. And I'm talking about dealing with cancer in the 60s and 70s. So in those days, he was directly in touch with the Tata Memorial Hospital of Bombay. And I remember two instances where he had talked about cases of liver cancer that he had handled very successfully, and to which even the Tata Memorial Hospital of Bombay had given him credit for that. And even one instance when they have referred a case from Bombay to Dr. Munje. And one more wonderful thing about Dr. Munje was he used a lot of biochemic medicines. And he was a master in use of biochemics. And he would prepare his own combinations. Unfortunately, we don't have much literature or much of his work of homeopathy. His records and all this could not be, we could not lay our hands much on that. But it would be wonderful if his cases and his had been stored, and the world would have got to see what he really did with the biochemic medicine. Because the knowledge of the use of biochemic medicine in cancer is very, very limited. And Dr. Munje would prepare his own medicines. I remember he had a small pharmacy-like place, and he had all his instruments over there. And he would prepare his homeopathic medicines or his combinations. And that is a most wonderful thing. One more instance that I want to mention over here is very unfortunate that because as a young man in my second and third year, I would always tell him that I would like to come and learn homeopathy from you. And then he would say, okay, you finish your studies, you finish your studies. And one day in 1985 or 1986, Dr. Munje was passing through Nasik, and he got off the train. And my father and we had gone to meet him. When he left from Bombay, he had informed my father, and we went to meet him. And when he met my father, he said, I have come to take Farooq. I want to take Farooq with me to Nasik, 85, I don't know what. And I want to take him with me to Kanpur. And for 2 or 3 months, I want him to be there. And all the work that I have done in homeopathy, I want him to record it. But unfortunately, it should be 86, because that was the time I had just started my clinic also. And I had set up my clinic, just done the inauguration of my clinic. But I hope I had left that and gone with him. And that would have been a great learning I would have had. So that is one thing I always regret in my life that I did not do.
what are your memories of the Homeopathy?
Yes, as I just told you, my memories of discussing homeopathy with Dr. Munje was his use of biochemistry. And, very few homeopaths today in India or even elsewhere talk about the use of biochemical medicines in treatment of chronic diseases. There is a lot of talk about using homeopathy for acute complaints, but Dr. Munje used them very, very effectively for chronic complaints. And even when Dr. Munje would speak about homeopathy, we know he was very passionate about homeopathy. I think after the Baha'i faith, if he was passionate about anything, it was about the science of homeopathy. He spoke about homeopathy with lot of love, with lot of respect, and he really believed. And as we now come to understand, he believed it to be the medicine of the future, and it is the most modern medicine. If you go according to history, homeopathy is considered the most modern of all the medical sciences. So that is one thing that Dr. Munje was very clear about, and its link with the Baha'i faith was one thing that he was very clear about. So these are some moments that I remember when he would explain these connections. That would be very thrilling for me.
How much has Homeopathy ever in the Munje life?
Oh, yes. You see, homeopathy has advanced. One of the things that I would say is it has become much more commercial than it was in the time of Dr. Munje. And it is something that now in cities like metropolitan cities, homeopathy has become the medicine of the rich. And before it was the medicine for the poor. So that is one significant difference. The other difference was that homeopathy was practiced the way Dr. Hahnemann preached it. So it was practiced in a very simple way, in a very straightforward way, the way the books really wanted them described. But today you will see that there are different schools of thoughts in homeopathy. And I would not even mind saying that divides us, that forms the different schools of homeopathy, which is, I'm sure, Dr. Munje would have been very sad about. He wanted the simple way that homeopathy really evolved, really came up, was what homeopathy was. Very straightforward, very well understood. Our books are very clear about it. But today we have a lot of schools of homeopathy, a lot of thoughts of homeopathy. But ultimately, they all have to go and revolve around Dr. Hahnemann, our master of homeopathy. So that is one change, and that commercial thing that I said. Yes. Of course, there is a lot of research, Anand. I'm sorry. There is a lot of research that has come in now, and many things have been proved about homeopathy. Like they said, there is no substance in homeopathy. Now, nanoparticles have been found even in 200 potency. They were not understanding, like our college did a very good, wonderful research, and it showed a change in the body's current that flows to the body when an homeopathic medicine is given on the tongue. So that was a very great research that we did in physiology. And now even they are trying to understand the mode of working of homeopathic medicine in the recent research. So there are over a few thousand research papers that are there. Even the Central Council for Research in Homeopathy on their website have over 1,700 research papers on homeopathy. So that is one thing that was not there in the time of Dr. Munje, and he would have been a great contributor to this research work of homeopathy.
What can we learn from him?
Oh, yes. My God, what a very, very tough question. What we can learn from Dr. Munje was silence, speaking only when you were asked, speaking to the point, and his simplicity and his eagerness to share knowledge when asked for. If you wanted some guidance from him, you were very sure that you will get the complete guidance at the right time. So no doubt, one very important thing to learn from Dr. Munje was to speak when asked, and then give the final, that was the final answer that you could expect from anybody over there. Yes, very good question.
I'm curious to hear about your impression of the AIHEARU App campaign.
Yes. I have been following your interviews with the help of this app that you are using. And I have found it very interesting because I also have 3 of my patients who would have benefited with an app like this in their language. Because, of course, it is not, they are Gujaratis, one of them is Marathi. But I am very impressed that, your knowledge and your curiosity and your information that you collect, now you can share it with all of us. So that is a very wonderful thing. Of course, you were doing it with the use of the digital world, but now to hear you and then be able to understand what you are really trying to tell us from your heart, that has a very big impact. And that is what impresses me about this app very much. And I'm sure it's going to go and become better and better as the days go by.
Thank you so much, Farooq, for joining this more deep, wonderful interview.
It's my pleasure, completely, entirely my pleasure. And I thank you for having me on this show. And anytime I would be eager to join anytime else you have any other subjects that we can discuss. Thank you. Thank you very much, Anand. And all your team members.
Bye for now.
Bye for now. Thank you. Bye.